Okay, so for our FRQ, everyone, FRQ is going to be about the problems of the Gilded Age and how changes or solutions are come up with later to try to fix those problems, and which makes sense, right? That's what we've been talking about this whole time since we've gone back from Christmas break, right? Each chapter has focused on different problems facing Americans, all the changes happening in the 1800s. If I get a marker somewhere, just looking at the different chapters, you can see, right? 16 is all about the industrial problems of the late 1800s, right? The problems of factories, the problems of business owners trying to make as much profit as possible, no matter what. Chapter 17, chapter 18, we talked about the problems of the cities and how with all these people coming to the big cities, they weren't ready for it yet. The structures are not set up yet. The systems are not set up yet. So then we get to 19, where we're talking about who the progressives are and how they're trying to fix those problems. That's what most of 19 was about. We just talked about that. If you were in A-Day, if you're in B-Day, we're finishing that up today. Although we did talk about some progressives in these earlier chapters who are challenging some of the problems or challenging some of the issues going on. So let's talk about these problems. First of all, let's talk about the problems of industry. Okay, what are some problems that comes with all the industrialization of the late 1800s? What are problems? Okay, we have bad working conditions. Yeah, so workers are working long hours a day, dangerous working conditions, unsafe working conditions. At this time period, if you got injured on the job, you would probably just be fired. There's no such thing as workman's compensation where you have the business pay for like medical bills. You're just fired. Okay, good. What else? What are other problems coming with industrialization? Okay, low wages. Workers are not paid very well. Business owners are looking for the easiest way to keep profits up, and that's going to be wages. For many industries, wages is going to be the biggest cost for a company. Not all companies, but many. What else? Okay, what was it? Trust or monopoly? What is that?
Business gets too big and the government rules that it's holding an unfair advantage over over its competitors because it basically becomes like the only choice in that field.
Okay, so it's too big of a business, and they are looking for ways to make as much money as possible, right? If they're the only company selling oil or the only company selling steel, then the people who have to buy from them will pay any price. And so they'll lead to maybe unfair business practices. They'll take out smaller companies, right? Some famous people who do that are John B. Rockefeller. What industry was he in, Rockefeller? Oil. And then also Andrew Carnegie. What business was he in? Steel. Carnegie Steel and Standard Oil.
Also get like mentioned much later, but like AT&T got broken up by antitrust laws.
Yep, 1800s.
That was like the 1980s. Like,
Yeah,
or
1900.
something.
So, so there's many problems that are facing, um, people in these factories, whether it's unsafe working conditions, low wages, bad trust. There's also, with bad working conditions, child labor. Um, let's say maybe, can I use the phrase, no quality control? So what I mean by that is, businesses could kind of do whatever they want with their products and they didn't really care, right? We saw that with the meat factories where, read about the book, The Jungle, written by Upton Sinclair. We talked about meat packing factories and how like rats would go into the meat and poison would go into the meat. There's no rules for that. So again, all of this is trying to create the fastest, most efficient way to make their products.
The reason why they have like those tags on like mattresses is because like transparent about what is in them because like like companies were putting like really
Yeah, that's a part of it.
stuff.
So let's look at the solutions to some of these problems. First, one of the big solutions is actually going to come from the workers' side, right? What do workers do to try to fix their problems? Labor unions, right? Labor unions is going to be the number one way workers are going to fight for their rights. Okay, so they do things like collective bargaining, where you try to negotiate with management and try to get certain maybe better wages, working conditions, whatever it is. So this negotiation. People could go on strike, right, where you refuse to work, and it's kind of like a game of chicken. Who's going to blink first? Who's going to give in first? Is it going to be management because they're not making any money, or is it because the workers because they're not making? Okay. We talked about a couple examples of labor unions, like the American Federation of Labor. And we talked about the Knights of Labor.
So at this point, a lot of unions not specific industries and rather more broad.
Yeah, I mean, there would be some that would be specifically like, this is just for this type of job, but many, like these two, were much more expansive. American Federation of Labor was very open. Remember, we talked about, unlike many labor unions, they were open to women, African American workers. Really, the only group they denied access to were Chinese immigrants. Skilled, unskilled workers, whereas Knights of Labor were skilled workers only.
When did like the like specific unions come onto the scene, like more prevalent? Wasn't wasn't UAW?
They'll start around this. National Ladies Garment Workers Union. Okay, so we have labor unions. We have for trust monopolies. Yes. Oh, did I mix them up? Sorry. Thank you, Stephanie. The Knights of Labor is open. American Federation of Labor is skilled workers. Sorry, my fault. Thank you, Stephanie. Okay. For trust monopoly, we talked about two laws that try to combat the power of monopolies. We talked about Herman Antitrust Act. Did it work? No, it wasn't very strong. It wasn't able to adequately stop monopolies from happening. So they later had to come back in the 1900s with the Clayton Antitrust Act.
That was Teddy Roosevelt.
I believe it was under Wilson's presidency. Okay. Child labor laws would start to be passed, not nationally, and there's not a national law until the 1930s, but certain states will start passing child labor laws. Nope, I believe when it's completely abolished in the 1930s. No quality control. We have things like the jungle from Upton Sinclair. Okay.
Labor was outlawed in this state in 1909.
That's what we're always looking at. Here's a problem, and here's a solution for it. Yep, the jungle. Remember that was a book written by Upton Sinclair, talking about the meat packing factories, and it spurred a lot of people to want changes to making rules for businesses. Okay. Let's talk about problems of the big cities. What were some problems in big cities? Okay, so we have tenement apartments. Okay, so remember, these are rundown apartments. Most of them are located very close to the big factories, which most people living there were immigrant workers. Many of them had to live there because, again, another problem with cities is no public transportation. So that meant that you had to live close to your place of work so you could walk there, which kind of limits the places you can live to these rundown tenement apartments. What are some other problems? Sanitation issues. Right, no running water. We have fire is an issue in these big cities, right? Lots of wood frame buildings with kerosene lanterns in the mid 1800s, ripe for fires. People at this time would also claim that that alcoholism is a major problem facing big cities.
So as big of a problem as they made it out to be back then.
I mean, people drank a lot in the 1800s, especially in the mid 1800s. Like per capita, how many like gallons of alcohol is drunk every day or every year in America was much higher than it is today. And there's lots of different reasons for that, and it's not. Yeah, and it's not really important if it was necessarily a problem or anything, because in the 1800s, many progressives viewed this as a morality issue, and that alcoholism was leading to lots of problems. Okay, so regardless of what people think about alcohol today, in the 1800s, they believed it. So let's talk about some of the solutions that came out during this time. So we have certain like code requirements for new apartment buildings. So they say like things like you have to have running water, or it has to be electrified, right? Because if you electrify that place, you don't need to have kerosene lantern, less likely to start a fire. I think that comes later, but not too much later.
Okay.
We have more steel framed buildings. So not only does this protect more against fire, but it also allows businesses or buildings to grow taller. So it enables more apartment buildings to be produced, which drives down prices, right? When there's more of something, more supply, price goes down. For sanitation issues, running water causes or solves a lot of those problems, but also there is the City Beautiful movement, where basically they're going to go and try to clean up cities as best they can. There's a man named George Waring in New York City. He got his workers all dressed up in like white from head to toe, and they went around the city and just cleaned it up. Okay, and that's a part of the sanitation solutions. You could talk about the solutions like the I lost it. Temperance movement. These are people who are against alcohol. Groups like the Anti-Saloon League would go around and try to stop alcohol from being sold. Eventually, they do pass an amendment, wholesale alcohol, in the 18th Amendment. We'll talk more about that amendment in our. There's the Gospel of Wealth, or the social gospel. So this is back in chapter 17. So this kind of two parts. Gospel of Wealth, remember, is that rich people should give their money to help the poor. We saw that, right, with Carnegie giving a bunch of money for libraries, Rockefeller giving money to like University of Chicago. And the social gospel isn't just for rich, it's for everybody. Well, for Christians specifically, basically saying that to be a good Christian, you need to go and help the people around you, especially the poor. And so that's when it leads to things like the YMCA. Right? YMCA stands for Young Men's Christian Association. Basically, it became a place where you could have middle class and working class Americans come for like recreation, but also for kind of a community center. It ultimately leads to things. I'd put that more into social gospel. Remember, there's the settlement home movement. The most famous example of the settlement home is the Hull House. Who ran the Hull House? Jane Addams. Remember, settlement homes were basically community centers where people could come and community center would try to help them with the problems. Maybe it was English learning lessons, or maybe it was how to apply for citizenship or to get into an apartment building. Okay, questions so far? One more thing I want to talk about, everybody, and that's the problem of politics, right? Politics has gone through some major changes during this chapter. What's the major change in politics during the 1800s? Political machines, right? These are when political parties
Like,
are, yep, this is problems, are creating organizations that are completely surrounded by the idea of getting and maintaining power by any means necessary, even unethical or illegal activities. So we have corruption with political machines, right? Whether it's through things like electoral fraud, where they lie about the elections, who's counting the ballots, or at this time we don't have things like driver's license or proof of residency. It's really easy to lie about who you are to vote, so people would encourage people to vote multiple times. We have bribery, okay, bribing election officials, bribing police officials, and we have kickbacks, right, where you're stealing money from taxes from the people and using it to fill your own pockets. And so if I had to summarize like the problems of these political machines, it's that they're taking political power away from the people. One other thing, so that's kind of political machines. One other thing I want to mention too is that sometimes the government in business relationships were too close, or businesses would have a really close relationship with the government to the point where the government would not make any rules for them. We saw that happening in Wisconsin with the railroad companies having so much power. It led to a lot of corruption and not what was best for people of Wisconsin, but instead what was best for those railroad companies. So, what are some solutions? Let's talk about this one first. What's a solution that happened here in Wisconsin, or who was a solution? Robert La Follette. Right? Robert La Follette wants to sever this relationship, split them apart so that they are not too close anymore. He wants more controls on railroads. And that just means more rules for them. Actually be able to put a regulation in place. Wisconsin, the home of the Wisconsin Navy. That's where they experimented with a lot of different and new ways to give political powers. So states and cities around the country found mechanisms or ways to give people more political power. What were some of those ways? Referendum, right? Vote on an issue. It can become a law. What else? Recall, where the people can vote to get out a governor or a city manager or whoever it is. That was one thing that was experimented with in Wisconsin, recall. Yep, we talked about in the class in 2010, they passed, they had a recall election. Up to that point, any governor who had a recall election was kicked out of office. Scott Walker was the first president or first governor to ever win a recall election. Okay, what else? Secret ballot, right? Which explain, okay, make sure that people people's voting habits are secret. What else? Correct. Primary. Where political leaders aren't in charge of who's going to run for a political office. People are. The people get to vote on it.
At this point, are the electors still have power, or are they more bigger?
In like the electoral college?
Yeah.
Yes, they have power, but they're mostly tied to voting for whatever the state voted for, but not completely. Yes. Referendum, the people get to vote on an issue. Like if the people of Wisconsin are asked, should we legalize marijuana, right? If the people vote on it, and it was a binding referendum, then it would go either.
They had to pass a referendum to build this.
For political machines, who was the person who just took down Boss Tweed? Thomas Nast. And what was his method? Political cartoon. Thomas Nast, I think we did. That was in chapter 18. Direct primary? Yeah, so before this time period, the party leaders, like the Republican Party leader, would decide who's going to be the nominee for like governor in the Republican Party, right? The direct primary is when you're asking people to decide who should be our nominee to run for governor. It depends. Some states like Wisconsin, you don't have to be a registered party member to vote.
Oh, yeah.
So like me, and if there is a primary for the Republican Party and Democratic Party, I could vote in a primary for either one. I can't vote for both, but I can vote for either one. Okay, we'll end it there, everybody. I will post this video onto Google Classroom. I forgot to mention to B-Day students to check this out this morning, so have them watch it if you know anyone in B-Day. Thanks, everybody. If you have any questions, just let me know.